So today, to kick us off, allow me to welcome our speaker, Adam Niemer. Adam is the founder of Simple Mental Health and spent 20 years prior mostly as a CFO and senior operations executive. In his session, The ROI for Putting Mental Health Forward, please welcome Adam.
Oh, thanks, Amanda. Is this working? You guys can hear me? All right. This is amazing. We were just thinking, are we surprised that there are this many people here after the bash, Amanda's Barnyard bash last night? Or it's amazing. Thanks for inviting me to come talk today and share some ideas. And really, for last night, I want to start with, I'm coming here thinking, who's Amanda? The Barnyard Bash? Why is she having a bash, right? And then I'm sitting here and I get the program. I'm sitting in the table over there and I'm looking at this thing going, wow, there's a big leadership team, right? All these people. And I start thinking, I do this for a living, right? I go around the country. I talk to organizations like this. It's probably my 20th or so HFMA chapter or region I've been to. And I never seen anything like I saw last night. And when you go around the country, you hear, Aaron had to leave earlier, but you hear from Aaron, you hear from the regional executives around the country that Oregon, it's a different sort of chapter. It's beyond collegiality. And then they invited everybody to come to the stage last night, right? I've never seen another organization that has, past presidents, right? It's amazing. So if you weren't here, they pulled up the leadership team for the chapter that started here, and it went like all the way around here, right? It's like half the bloody room is in a leadership role of this thing. And it's amazing, and that's why, right, you guys are talked about. That's why when you go around the country, and I go around the country and I talk with folks and they say, you gotta go to Oregon. It's different there, and it's about leadership. And you guys have it. And leadership, that's what we're talking about today, right, and this morning, and get you started for the day. We all get to choose what sort of leader we wanna be, right? How do we wanna show up? How do we wanna be experienced? And it's a choice, right? We have an active choice. Do I want to be open or closed, vulnerable and share, or not vulnerable and share? How do I want the people who work with me to experience me? Those are choices that we make. And what I'm hoping to do over the next 86 minutes or so is to walk you through the business case, right? To educate you on the business case and inspire you each on the human case to make mental health literacy a key component of the foundation. Whatever leader you choose to be, right? We put all these tools in our toolbox as the foundation. What I'm here to do today is to educate and inspire you to take some time to put mental health literacy as a foundation of it. And we're also going to give you a roadmap, right? So you're going to leave here this morning with the bloody simplest, it's simple, you'll hear this word over and over again, simple. It's the simplest roadmap to get this done. All right. I'll start by bringing you back in time with me about 20 years to one of the best days of my career. I heard this noise. It was like a clicking sound, click, 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 click. And I was walking down the hallways of Sunnyside Hospital in Clackamas and hearing this sound, and the thought crossed my mind, dude, you're the CFO of this place today, right? It's this job I probably had no right to, but it was a job I talked myself into, and the only reason I didn't throw my hands in the air and celebrate having the greatest job in the world, I was fucking miserable. I couldn't breathe. I had a clutching pain in my chest that wanted to explode. I had anger I couldn't put my fingers on. I had a 18-year anxiety attack layered on top of severe. Somehow sorry about that. I was sure I had, it's on Do Not Disturb. Sorry about that. My 14-year-old says hi. How does he do that? So let's see, where was I? So, I had an 18-year anxiety attack that, and I had no idea. That clicking sound, I thought I was going further into my dream career, but I was just going deeper into a really dark and lonely place. It impacted my ability to lead and be led, my ability to be a husband, a father, a friend. It impacted my ability to be the person I wanted to be. By all outward appearances, I lived a charmed life, but on the inside, I was always so sad and so scared, and I couldn't control my emotions, and I didn't know why. Then about 7 years ago, something really special happened, something that shifted my life in the most profound way. A colleague at work, a senior leader, this guy named David Lake, he asked me to join him in his office one day. And when I got there, he asked me, how are you feeling, right? I'd recently found my mom after she had passed away. And having learned the signs of somebody who might be struggling with their mental health, he's recognized a bunch of behaviors in me that worried him, and he wanted to help. So he says, are you okay? Are you seeing a therapist? And I said, completely oblivious to the reality at that moment in time, I was slipping closer and closer into a state of near complete emotional collapse. I smiled and looked at him, and I was like, nah, man, I don't need any help. I'm fine. I'm doing great. So he asked if I knew the signs in my, if I knew what to look for in myself, right? The signs that I might be struggling with my mental well-being. And after I said no, he slid across the desk the business card of our company's employee assistance program, right? And he's like, give EAP a call. It can't hurt. You should at least know the signs to look for in yourself in case you need to get some help, right? These magic words we're going to go over later today, this morning. Oh, a 5-minute conversation. 5-minute conversation changed my life, right? It started me on a journey of recovery. It's made the moments since then so much more full of love and joy and hope. Just a 5-minute conversation, my senior executive helped launch me on a new path. I wasn't surrounded anymore by this cacophony of clicking as I meandered alone down this hallway to my own doom. But what he helped me do was he put me on a new path, right? A path of self-discovery and healing, a path of hope and optimism, a path of spiritual awakening and real life fulfillment. And I learned that I wasn't on it alone. The path that David set me down by calling the EAP counselor, by talking about going to therapy, by talking about my feelings with the people around me in life, I found that I had a ton of folk around me who just wanted to help and be there for me, right? And as I was open with my colleagues at work about what was going on in my life and my teammates and all of our staff, and as I genuinely cared about their emotional needs and mental well-being, not only my life and the lives of my teammates changed, but our team performance, our business performance changed. A high-performing team started hitting heights I never would have thought possible, right? And what I hope you hear and take away from this morning's session. And why I share all this with you is it's time that we all, as leaders, as professionals, it's time that we break through the myths of mental illness that's informed traditional business leadership, right? It's time that we all put mental health literacy in our professional toolboxes next to like GAAP accounting rules, Medicare reimbursement guidelines, compliance issues, all these skills we put in our toolboxes over the years. Fact of the matter is that knowing how to recognize the signs that a colleague might be struggling with their mental well-being, knowing how to approach them thoughtfully in a safe and caring manner, and engaging them non-judgmentally, knowing how to encourage professional help and self-care. These are just as important skills for a leader as, sales, marketing, human resources management, right? The data, finance folk. Look at the data. Rand Corporation and the Lancet Medical Journal in Europe have done a study, and they found that every dollar invested in mental health services returns $4 in improved productivity and healthcare costs, right, at a macro level. So think about what that means for like the organizations here that are self-funded or any self-funded health organization in America. Every time they invest $1 in, not wellness programs, but getting people help, actually going to get help, getting services, right? Going to see a therapist, going to see a social, calling EP, getting help, has a 300% return on investment, right? In terms of reduced health and improved productivity. Attendance, the Gallup group. The Gallup, they do studies. They put a study out a few years ago, and they found that folks who struggle with their mental well-being, this is like so obvious, they miss 4 times more work days, right? In fact, so if we struggle with people showing up for work, people who struggle with their mental well-being miss 4 times more work days. Recruiting, or retention. All right, this is I love it. How many of you work with like millennials and Gen Zers? Okay, how many of you are millennials and Gen, okay, I'm sorry. All right, so this blows my mind, but the Great Resignation, right? Mindshare Partners 2 years ago found that 50% of millennials, 50% of y'all, and 75% of Gen Zers have left a job in part due to mental health reasons, right? No wonder, right? It's studies. This is why people are leaving. Retention, the American Psychological Association put a study out last year that found that 81% of Americans share that how a future employer is going to support their mental well-being will be a significant driver for them in choosing their next job. Right? So you put this together, and 81% of the people that you are looking to hire today, right? They expect you and your teams to already know and lead with all of this information. And Mindshare Partners a minute ago proved that they'll leave you if you don't, right? The state of mental well-being in the American workplace today is so dire that just this past year, the U.S. Surgeon General declared it one of the top 6 population health priorities for the United States. And let that sink in for a second. One of the top population health priorities for the U.S. Surgeon General today on his website. It's not homelessness, obesity, or opiate addiction. It's workplace mental well-being. It's simply how we all experience the environment and culture that we're in each day at work, right? The environment and culture that's established and perpetuated by us, by the leaders. But it's also an environment and culture that it's a leader's duty to do something about, right? Well, I remember like it was yesterday when this guy, Chris Oman, almost 18 years ago, taught me this. He says, a non-delegatable core accountability of leadership is to create an environment where all teammates can show up as their full selves every day, be the best teammate they can be, and perform at the top of their game, right? And that sort of leadership, that sort of meta leadership, that that really gets us back to that conversation in David's office 7 years ago. As I walked in, as I walked into his office that day, I had no idea the severity of the mental illness I'd been struggling with for the last 18 years, let alone that I experienced challenges with my mental health to begin with, which is ironic given where my story begins. Earlier in life, when I was 29, I found my dad after he died of suicide. And I didn't get anywhere near enough help that I needed. He was my best friend, my business partner, guy I always wanted to be just like. Calm, cool, collected. Man, Mort Niemer was the last person anyone thought would have been struggling with their mental health, right? And what I do next, the crossroads of my life where I needed it the most, and it would have prevented so much help and so much pain down the road. I had a couple therapy sessions and I went on into the world. I got an MBA, I got married, I grew this Forrest Gump-like lucky executive career. I mean, CFO of a hospital, CFO of a multi-billion-dollar health system. I ran the operations of a $4.5 billion health plan, for a dude who only got into business so I could hang out with my dad every day. I was doing pretty good as this accidental healthcare executive. I thought I was, but there were times without knowing it when I could be a monster to everyone around me, right? My colleagues at work, my friends, my kids, my now ex-wife. I raised my voice, I interrupted people when they spoke. I could be relentless, arrogant, and mean, short-tempered, defensive, impatient. I could be a real son of a bitch to everybody. But, what I really was, I was just the son of a guy who died of suicide. I was the son who lost his icon, the son who I didn't know where to look to deal with my pain, so I pushed it down. And I had no idea that I was using all of my strength and resilience just to keep it hidden from the world, right? But David Lake, a senior executive at Kaiser Permanente who had mental health literacy, right? A senior leader who just the day before calling me into his office, he was at a mental health literacy class at his church, just like what I'm about to walk you through today. He went to a class, like I'm going to teach you an overview for you today, at his church. And that's where he learned to recognize that I was struggling in a class. And that's where he came up with the idea to approach me the next day. Right? So just taking a class like I'm an overview for you today. Next day he had a 5-minute conversation, changed my life. You all are here today because David took a class like this at his church 7 years ago. Right? It's just remarkable. A couple days later, I saw the EAP counselor, right? And employee assistance. Do me a favor, raise your hand if you're like employee assistance. What's this dude talking about? Everyone know? Anyone not? Employee assistance program. It's like I bet you all of you have it as a covered benefit through your organization, either as an employee benefit or in a wellness program. They're like, think of it as like if you're struggling with your well-being, right? Maybe finances, you're worried about your mental health, anything about your well-being, you have someone that you can call. They're usually a social worker, and it's a confidential, 100% confidential service provided by organizations, and they help refer you to a financial counselor or a therapist. They don't provide the service to you, but they help triage you to get the right help, right? An employee assistance program. So I go see the employee assistance counselor, and I started taking antidepressants, going to cognitive behavioral therapy, and went to a specialized trauma therapy program, and that stuff helped a little. And I I learned critical life skills, but I still couldn't breathe. It hurt so much. It felt like I was moving through life, breathing through a straw. And then one day, I experienced the magical power of slow vinyasa hot yoga. And the next day, for the first time in a really, 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 really long time, I took a deep breath. You know, I still have good and bad days. I always will. But eventually, over time, I came out the other end. I came out happier and stronger than I ever dreamt I could be. I came out with true self-love, self-respect, self-confidence. For the first time in my very life, I had those things. I came out forged with the knowledge that there wasn't one damn thing the universe or genetics or serendipity can't throw my way that I can't overcome. And I started to think about leadership differently. You know, what did it mean to me as a leader to know that so many of my colleagues on any given day are struggling with their mental well-being, and it hurts so damn much, and we're all wearing these masks that it doesn't hurt. So we trained all of our staff on mental health first aid. And what I wasn't expecting was that, you know, as we trained everybody, as I started sharing my story and everyone started sharing theirs, that, you know, our business performance improved. Everything across the board, employee engagement and productivity, recruiting, retention, almost every key KPI went up on our teams from these conversations. You know, frankly, after a 20-year executive career at a $80+ billion company, going through mental health literacy training with my team together was the single best team development and professional growth activity I ever participated in, right? It taught me that becoming a mental health literate leader is not complicated or hard. It's really easy. And creating a culture of mental well-being on your teams is really easy, right? You just have to take a half-day class and use what it teaches you. You know, a couple months after I came back to work, right, so I had my emotional breakdown. I'm out of work for a while, and kind of my team took care of around the health plan. You know, about a few months later, and after I came back to work, I had an all-hands meeting with our health plan staff in Portland, and you know, I shared with them what was going on in my life. They were, you know, a lot of them were wondering where I'd been. They were used to seeing me around all the time. They're like, "Where's Aneemer been?" So, you know, I shared with them what was going on, and a couple days later, I go for a walk with this young, high-performing, enthusiastic, just remarkable leader that we had recently recruited from Colorado. His name was Cameron. And as we're going for a walk, he started thanking me, and I couldn't figure out why this guy was thanking me. And he shared with me that, you know, as a kid, as a very young boy, he had attempted suicide. And he had gone to therapy after that, but it didn't seem to work. And, you know, that he was really young at the time. And he knew that he didn't want to die, but he just thought his life was always going to be sad. And then he heard me, his boss's boss, the other day share that I was going through the same stuff. And even though therapy wasn't working yet, I was in it for the long haul because I had confidence that it would. He was just thanking me because it inspired him to, you know, make a therapy appointment in a couple weeks and try therapy again. You know, we keep in touch. You know, he knows that I tell this story. He loves that we do. He loves it. And we just spoke just a handful of weeks ago, actually, and I'm here to report Cameron is thriving across all aspects of his life. He has a community of friends all around him in Portland. He has, he's happy, he's optimistic about life. His career is thriving. He's a leader of team across 4 states for Kaiser. And like David Lake, right? Like David Lake, Cameron will tell you that if you want to grow your team's performance, right, you got to take care of your people. Right? And if you want to take care of your own career, right, you got to take care of yourself. And there is simply no simpler way of doing it than just saying, yeah, I'll just put mental health literacy as part of my, go learn how to do that for a half day, right? It's really easy. I mean, because what happened is, here's David. They love this. Hold on, I know there's a pointer here somewhere. So this is his family. There's Dave in the middle. This was last year's family picture. I just got this year's. So, 5-minute conversation, right? This guy went through something, went through a class, then he had a 5-minute conversation. That's the impact that you have on people. And that's, what we're going to talk about for the rest of this hour here, right? Mental health literacy. So, what is it? How do you get it? What's this? I told you that my goal today was to inspire you about the human case, right? Make you want to do something about it, educate you on the business case, and then give you a roadmap. So, what's this dude talking about? Mental health literate leadership. What the heck is that, right? All right. It's really simple. Mental health literate leaders, there's 3 things. They understand some basic facts, right? They understand that it's real, it hurts like hell, it's everywhere. They're not becoming a therapist, but you understand some basic facts to break the stigma. They learn how to help people get help. Do me a favor, raise your hand if you got a first aid kit at home. And keep your hands up. Everyone, first aid kit. Who doesn't have a first aid kit at home? Really? Okay, okay, do you have a drawer with stuff in it? Yeah, okay. Oh, thank God. All right. And keep your hands up. All right, you guys got first aid kits in your car? You got in your offices, you got first aid kits? Okay. Do you think that any time in life in the United States of America you are more than 100 yards away from a first aid kit? Really? Do you think, where could you possibly be more than 100 yards away from a first aid kit? I don't know, right? Raise your hand if you got a mental health first aid kit. Yeah. So learning how to help people get help, it's just having a first aid kit for mental health. And we're going to talk about that. It's real easy. It's just learning how to notice the signs and how to engage in a conversation and how to help direct people to services. It's really simple. And the last piece of mental health literate leadership, and this gets to the point that I started with, right? We all get to choose what sort of leader we show up as. We get to choose how we're experienced as a leader, but mental health literate leaders, they say, well, wow, 20% of my colleagues feel this way. How might I behave as a leader differently so that I'm not making them worse, but I'm making people better and we get better performance, right? What are those leadership behaviors that matter? What are those traditional things that we used to always do that we shouldn't do anymore, right? And what are those things that we should start doing? All right. Basic facts. So, it all, let's see. We've gone through a lot of the business facts already, right? We've understood the ROI. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But, when we talk about what are the basic facts, when you take a mental health literacy workshop, you learn really basic stuff. You're not becoming a therapist, right? Just like, we all took first aid classes. We're not doctors, right? You just know how to put a bloody Band-Aid on somebody. That's all we're doing here. So the first thing, and it's funny that you got to kind of explain this, but 22% of Americans don't believe that depression and anxiety is a real illness. Really, 22% of us. That's amazing. So you got to start with, first, what's the basic fact for mental health literate leaders? Is that the darn thing is real. We all have mental health. Mental health is just a continuum that we're all on. It's just like we're all on this cardiovascular continuum, right? We're all on it. We all have cardiovascular health. Some of us are genetically gifted and we can drink and smoke all we want and we're really healthy. Some of us aren't and we need our heart cracked open tomorrow. Some of us exercise and are healthy. Some of us, for reasons that we can't control, genetic, may become unhealthy. But then someone who's unhealthy can practice good behavior, start taking care of themselves and get healthy, right? We are all bouncing around this continuum. And just because I might start breathing heavily in a moment and could be, that doesn't mean I have a heart attack. It just means in a moment I can calm down, right? We're all moving along this continuum. And our goal is kind of stay on the healthy side, right? Right? Mental well-being is the same darn thing, right? We are all every day have mental health. We are all at either, we're somewhere from I'm doing great or I'm really over here sinking. And we go through this all day long, right? You could get a bad email, the budget hit, you got to cut another 4%. You feel a sinking feeling. Just because you have a sinking feeling, it doesn't necessarily mean you have a mental illness, right? Because we all have mental health. We are all moving around this continuum. Now, some folk, like me, I can be in a sinking manner and I can't control it. It just comes for no reason, right? And I need to get help for it, right? So it's real. So you gotta, mental health literate leaders, the corner, you gotta understand, it is real. And you gotta start with this, because no matter what room you're in, 22% of people don't think that it is, right? Statistically across America. All right. Next thing you got to know is that it really bloody hurts, man. It hurts like hell. I will do my best to give you a sense for what I mean by like that, but raise your hand if you got like kids. Raise your hand if you have children. And keep it up so I know. Raise your hand if you have grandkids. Keep your hands up. No, everyone, keep your hands up. If you have kids, grandkids, you have nieces and nephews, raise your hands. All right, well, I got most of everybody. Okay, so kind of close your eyes and really close your eyes. You got your eyes closed? Close your eyes and bring yourself to like a state fair with your kid. They're maybe 6, 7 years old. And you're talking with them, you turn around and they're gone. That worry, that rush of feeling, right? That unbelievable, that anxiety, you can feel, you can open your eyes now, that sense of, oh my God, what, all right? For me, anxiety is that coming for no reason. And you could just be there like this, right? Or it goes away. And so it's important to know, because we're going to get to how the prevalent it is, right? You know how much an arm hurts. Let me give you try to give you another example of the pain of mental illness. And it's important to know, and I don't do this to bring you down, but just to inspire you to action, right? If 25% of us had cancer every year, you'd want to do something about it, right? Because you know how much that hurts. So here's a couple other ways to think about mental illness pain. Depression, #1 cause of suicide in America. What other illness, physical illness, is there any other illness that drives a higher prevalence of suicide? One of the largest physical one is back pain, is a large driver of suicide, right? But so just think about that. What other physical ailments that hurt so much that people say, I'd rather not be here, right? So it's real, it hurts like hell, and it impacts our physical health. Mental health leaders understand that, I love this, this just boggles my mind, right? Apparently I'm on a Surgeon General kick these days. Loneliness, right? Sadness. So for me, depression, anxiety is like worry. Depression is this overwhelming sadness of loneliness. You all hear about the scourge of loneliness across America. You all work in healthcare, man, right? We all work in healthcare. Loneliness is like smoking 15 smokes a day. That's what it does to your body. No wonder that getting mental health services returns a 300% return on investment of healthcare costs and productivity. Loneliness impacts your physical body, your physical system, just like smoking 15 cigarettes a day, right? So it's real, it hurts like hell, and it's everywhere. So here's the statistic. 1 out of 5 Americans on any given year will experience will experience what a behavioral health condition, hey, come on in, sit down, find a seat. 1 out of 5 of us on any given year will experience what a behavioral health clinician would document in a medical record as a mental illness. 1 out of 5 of us every year, and every year, guess what? It's a different one. Right, so every 5 years. But the thing is that's pre-pandemic numbers, right? Pre-pandemic is the statistic. Post-pandemic, they're still doing studies on this. It's anywhere from like 25 to 40%. Let's say it's 25 and a really conservative 1 out of 4 of us. Do me a favor, stand up if your birthday's in June, July, or August. Now stand up if your room's June, July, or August. All right, and please stay standing up. June, July, yeah, all right. So 25%, this is what this looks like in this room this year. Right, now you guys sit down. August, stand up. August, September, October. Right? This is next year. Right? So August can still have, you could have 2 months, but see, it changes every year. Right? Now you guys can sit down. Thank you. So just to make the point, how many of you have dinner with people, with 4 or more people at your dinner table? When you pull your teams together, how many people at your team meetings? Right? This is bloody, absolutely bloody everywhere. And okay, so it's worse in healthcare. Okay, so check this out. I really am on a Surgeon General kick. So one of the other top 6 population health priorities for the U.S. Surgeon General on his website today is healthcare worker burnout. Healthcare worker burnout. I mean, just reflect on that. One of the top 6 population health priorities in this country today for our senior most population health leader in our country is the mental well-being of people in one profession. Yours. Right? And it's not just the clinical folk, right? We all lived through COVID. Right? We all were still doing Medicare reimbursement. We were checking people in. We were doing Charge Master. We were doing all this stuff during COVID. It's just as hard on all of you. So, basic facts, it's real, it's everywhere, it hurts like hell. We talked about its impact on our businesses. I want to just double click on one thought for you, right? Because we come from hospitals. There's a handful of prevalent things through my career at a healthcare company, a hospital-based company, and that was attendance. Our number one problem year over year over year, I was in multiple labor negotiations about this. So why the heck aren't people in our hospitals showing up for work? Well, when people who struggle with their mental well-being miss 4 times more work days, and it's 1 out of 4 of us, and in our industry it's worse, right? Well, no wonder we have an attendance problem. It's just, it boggles my mind. Next thing about mental health literate leaders is they start thinking about that we're part of the problem, right? That some of those traditional things that we learn. Any of you ever been asked to leave your emotions at the door? Right? There's no room in business for feelings. You can't do that anymore, right? It's a traditional business principle that is absolutely irrational if you're a mental health literate leader. So how do you get here? So here's the whole statistic, by the way. So 1 out of 4 of us every year experience a clinically diagnosable mental illness, but less than half of us seek help. And those that do, on average, it takes 11 years from the onset of symptoms to when you get your first help, right? So 1 out of 4 of us, less than half of us get help, and those that do, it takes on average almost 11 years before you get your first part of help. You suffer for 11 years before you ask for help. And the people, 80% of people who don't get help report that there's like one word that prevents them from getting help. Any thoughts? Well, I mean, why is it that of all the people who don't get, why is it that 80% of people who don't get help, knowing that conventional therapies work and you can get better, why don't people get help? Any idea? Stigma. Yeah, that's it. Think about it. We don't get help just because of what we think each other are going to think, right? I'm afraid of what my colleague's going to think, my boss, my wife, my friend, my husband. Could you imagine, let's get back to if half of us or a quarter of us had cancer every year, but we didn't want to get help because we were afraid what our employer, our teammates might think at work, right? It's insidious. And it lives in this cycle, and it really highlights why starting with the basic facts is so important, right? There's this isolation cycle. It's the myths of mental illness drive the stigma, which drive us shame, which keeps it silent, so we don't talk about it, right? That's an example. Depression isn't real, common myth, right? Depression isn't real. 22% of Americans believe depression isn't real. That leads to the stigma of people with depression. They're just weak. They're not strong enough. They haven't built enough resiliency. What's wrong with them? So then you feeling depressed and sad, you go, oh, I'm embarrassed. I feel shame, right? So you stay silent, don't talk about it. And what's the one thing you need to do to get better is to talk about it. You don't do, so you get worse. It's this insidious cycle. That's why when the mental health literacy courses, you start with understanding some basic facts. Because once you start breaking the myths, right, and sharing the truth and sharing your stories and normalizing the conversation, then people start getting better. All right. Any questions? I'll pause for a second before we get to the next part. Any questions? Okay. Helping people get help. You know, when you think about, I want to bring you back to some thoughts we talked about earlier about when you practice first aid, you're not a doctor, right? And when you practice mental health first aid, or when you help somebody notice and you help them get help, you're not a therapist, right? And I say this because when one of the reasons that folk choose not to get this training is because they say, well, I don't want to be a therapist. You're not, right? Just like putting a Band-Aid on doesn't make you a doctor. All you're learning to do is apply information that you already know in your head, and we're going to go over in a minute and we'll prove to you that you already know this. How to notice the signs and symptoms that someone's struggling. How do you engage them in a conversation, right? And engaging someone in a conversation is not rocket science. It's when am I going to talk with them? Where am I going to do it? And what are the first words out of my mouth? What am I going to say? All right, so how do I recognize the signs and symptoms? Then how do I engage in a conversation with somebody? Then how do I guide them to services? Right? The goal is to, you know, if folks, for every dollar spent on mental health services returns $4 of healthcare costs, and our goal is to help people get help. The goal of guiding someone is to help them get help and to show them where the resources are. I'll show you how to do that. Okay, notice. So, I said we'll say the word simple a lot today, right? So noticing is, you all know this already. You know, signs and symptoms. So get clear on the difference between a sign and a symptom, because if you're to be a mental health leader, you want to be noticing with your eyes any signs, but you want to be hearing if someone tells you a symptom. So a sign is something that you can see in somebody. They may look disheveled, tired, etc. Right? And you can see in somebody, it's a sign. Or someone could just tell you, hey, I'm really tired and I don't know why. Right? They're sharing with you a symptom. So what I want to share prove to you all that you guys know all these answers. So if you're like I want you to spend like 3 minutes as a table. Just as someone get a piece of paper out at each table. Can someone just at each table, one person take a piece of paper and a pen out. And whoever that person is, raise their hand so I know who you are. Okay. Everyone, I need to know who, you guys have a piece of paper and pencil? Someone give them then can you come over here? Someone give them a piece of paper and a pencil. Who's got the paper and pencil? You guys have? All right, he's got it. All right. Everybody have a paper? Do you have a paper and pencil, you too? You guys. Does everybody have okay, so what I want you to do as a table, I want to see how many signs and symptoms of mental illness you might think. So think about colleagues at work, and you just want to write on this and see who can come up with the most signs and symptoms of someone who may be struggling with their mental well-being. So just do this as a table, and so whoever's writing, write fast, because they're going to come quick. What are the signs and symptoms? Who?
You don't look in high school?
No. All right. So, now, whoever is taking notes, how many different things did you write down? I'm just curious. So count them up. Count them up. You got 9. You got 7. 15. 10. 11. 13. 10, 6, 12, all right, 15. Would you read your list? You want to, and can you talk loudly, or do you want to use this?
Lack of productivity,
Nope.
constantly apologizing.
Is it?
Taking unplanned time off, tired, pulling back, no longer as engaged, disruptive, irritable, not as creative in problem solving, just literally showing that they're struggling, overcompensating.
It's an amazing list. You guys know all this, right? Everything that you just shared is somewhere on here, right? The thing is that we all know what the signs and symptoms are. We intuitively, as human beings, know what they are. No one's ever said to you in like a mental health literacy class, hey, if you bucket these things together, they may be a possible symptom or sign of a mental health challenge. And it's really important to know possible, because one of the things that's really important when you're noticing and engaging with people is you're not diagnosing people, right? Remember, why don't people want to get help? Because of the word, right? So you're not going to someone and say, hey man, you look like you're really struggling with depression. You should go get some help, right? We're noticing, not could there be another reason someone could feel? Is there a good reason somebody could have a muscle ache and pain that has nothing to do with their mental health? Right? Yeah. Could you be lightheaded for another reason other than your mental health, right? So you're just noticing and watching. You mentioned the changes in behavior, looking for changes in behavior, right? So we know all of these things. So if we know all of them, that next piece is, when you become mental health literate, you learn how to engage folk. And engaging folk is, it's so simple. It's like, when are you gonna talk with somebody? And I've noticed that someone may be struggling, so when am I gonna talk with them? Where am I gonna do it, and what am I gonna say? What are the first words out of my mouth, right? So let's say you're worried about, you notice a colleague. What are some horrible places where you might not want to approach them? In front of a group of people. That would be a pretty lousy place. Yeah, when else would be a horrible time? Where else? In front of the police. Wow, man, you got interesting staff. All right, in your office, you don't want to do it in your office. It's, what about when? What's a good time to engage with someone, do you think? Nice one-on-one, yeah. What would be a horrible time? When would be a horrible time to do it? Say it again? Right before a deadline, right? So, and just out of curiosity, what might be the first words that would come out of your mouth? You saw them earlier. How you feeling? You doing okay? Man, that's all you learn how to do. That's all you're saying. Right? So you take these classes, you learn where. You want to be private, safe. A lot of people say, well, I'll talk in our office. No. You have this power dynamic in your office, right? Even if you're at a desk, whose pictures are on the walls? Is it your family or your person that you're talking about? My favorite, go for a walk. And here's why, even in Oregon, right? Folks who struggle with anxiety and depression like me, sometimes I struggle looking at people in the eyes and talking with them. You go for a walk with somebody and you normally do walks with folk, then it's a lovely time to be able to talk with somebody. When you have enough time for a full conversation, right? So it's not like you're bringing it up as you're just about to run in with a big deadline, and there's time to reflect afterwards. Right? So you learn how to do these things. First words. This is literally, we saw this earlier, the words that David used with me. How's it going? How are you? Do you know the signs to look for in yourself? Is everything okay? Literally, these are the words. Core principles of engaging. So we'll go through this. And again, I'm giving you the framework, the outline of what you learn in a literacy class. You listen non-judgmentally, right? Remember the stigma, right? So if people aren't getting help because we all have judgment about people who get help. So communicating non-judgmentally, being aware of verbal cues and nonverbal cues. What is it, like 80% of communication is just, the nonverbal stuff? So how you sit and look when you're having one of these conversations, are you smiling? Are you happy? Do you look angry? What do you look like? We don't have the answers. Remember, we don't have any of the answers. The goal is to not tell somebody what to do. It's to help them find what to do. Remove distractions, curiosity over judgment. And hold on, I got my list over here. So do me a favor. So with that, right? So there's some, I'm going to give you a phrase, and then give me a thumbs up if it's a helpful thing in a conversation, and give me a thumbs down if it's not helpful. But keep your thumb up and thumb down. Don't just go like this and then I can't see it. All right. So, man, you have such a great life. Think about all the good things you got. Thumbs up, thumbs down. I can't see. Some thumbs down, some thumbs up, okay, some thumbs up, thumbs down, yeah, some thumbs up. You have such a great life. Think about all the good. It's unhelpful, right? Why? Because you're not validating their experience, right? We're not listening non-judgmentally. They really don't feel that way. All right. How long have you been feeling like this? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Thumbs up. Thumbs up, some middle, some down. Yeah, no, thumbs up, it's totally cool, right? It's just the fact. How long have you been feeling? Curiosity over judgment, right? Most of you got this. How long have you been feeling like that? You just got to change your attitude. Yeah, okay, so that's pretty universally known not to say that. By the way, can you imagine who somebody in there with a really positive, trying to help you might say some of these things? Right? Can you imagine? Yeah, you can see that. Oh, well, we'll skip that one. All right, what can I do to help? That's a good thing to do. What can I do to help? I understand and know exactly what you're going through. That happened to me 2 years ago. No. It's, that's right. It's, the thing is that it's important that we share our stories, right? Because we've got to create an environment where people will be comfortable. But when you're talking with somebody, it's really just listening. Remember, we're listening. That's all. Life can be hard. You just got to pull yourself together and push through. Okay. All right. I had a few folks. So have any of you been told that before? I have. I've heard it from family members after I got diagnosed with mental. Okay. Have you spoken to anyone about this before? Yeah, right on. Because you're trying to, it's a simple, because you're trying to get someone help. Have you tried yoga or meditation? No, because it's, you're not trying to, if someone says, do you have any ideas for things that might be able to cool my mind? Yeah, maybe have you thought about yoga or meditation? But remember, it's curiosity, not judgment. We're not suggestion stuff. We're just trying to hear them and help them get some help. All right. That sounds really difficult. How are you coping? Yeah. Now, it's not just because there's room in the pink spot up there. Okay. So you get this. All right. So you've now gotten a very quick overview of the signs and symptoms. You know how to notice people, right? You now know, the very quick overview of how do you engage folk, right? How do you, when, where, what are the first words that you use, and then how do you engage in that conversation, right? So this last piece is guiding, right? Well, if they say, so what the hell do you do next, right? Hey, Joe, I'm worried about.
Quick question before we go to guide, is it, talk about curiosity versus judgment. Can we ask too many questions? Does it get too much into the weeds that you're trying to understand? Or is there how do you gauge where you're not trying to get too curious about it?
Nah, it's, it's, you're not having a management conversation. right? So this isn't like, how to take a management class, right? How do you have a courageous conversation? It's like you're talking with your butt. Don't think about, like, if you were sitting there talking with your mom and you were worried about her, would you have thought about that? If this was a family, it wouldn't have come up, right? So you think about, the best answer I can give you is you just take yourself out of the work setting and be a human, right? Be a person, because what all of this stuff is it's just that simple stuff in your intuition. It will guide you. You don't want to grill. You don't want to grill. You're not doing a job interview, right? You're not going through their resume. You'll understand it. What the other thing is you'll slip up, right? So I do this all the. Remember David, when he what did he say to me? Are you seeing a therapist? He said, hey, what was it? How you doing? Are you okay? Are you seeing a therapist? Right? He shouldn't have said that. Right? According to the rules, he shouldn't have said that. But he did, because it doesn't matter. I mean, sometimes when you put the Band-Aid on, it's not on perfect, right? You just got to start and go. So totally imperfect answer, but that's the best guidance I can give you. Is that helpful? Other questions before I move on? Thanks for that. All right. So we've done this. We all got first aid kits, right? What do you think you're going to want? So if you're going to go talk with somebody, what do you think they might, after you've engaged with them and they say, wow, I'd like help. What do you do next? What do you think you would want at your fingertips? Phone number for employee assistance, right on. What else do you want at your fingertips?
Things in that person's life, my life, that bring me joy, such as stories of my dog, pictures of my dog, that immediately get me a better headspace.
Because a first aid kit, we don't always use for other people, right? We use it for ourselves too. So a list of, what do I do when I'm having a bad day? Yeah, that's awesome. What else? What else would you want to have handy to pull out of your back pocket to say, oh yeah, here's an idea for you? Understanding of where the resources are. All right, so where are the resources? What do you do? Any thoughts? What do all of you have from each of your employer? Yeah, we said EAP, something else. You all have this now. Health insurance, right? So a mental health first aid kit, right? It's just a few phone numbers and stuff. So it's a benefit. We give these out in our training. You'll get all this electronically. But what we ask people to do is, it's something like 34% of Americans don't know that they have coverage for behavioral health now. And the fact is because for years we didn't, right? It wasn't until the advent of mental health parity laws across America that we actually have benefits. So 34% of people don't know that they can go get help, right? Or that they have a benefit. So, you put your benefit, your company, wherever you work, you have a link to the benefit coverage for behavioral health. You just put this on your document. And so when you're talking to somebody, you can say, did you know that we have X number of sessions that cost blah, 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 right? Have that handy, because people want access to services. So you just want to have that handy. And you all can get this. And it's all on your employee website or those booklets that my teams used to make and send out and all that crud. Okay, EAP coverage, right? So the link of the EAP. So you want to have that, either the phone number or the link to get. A lot of times they have like Life Matters, some companies that are, international, and the network of therapists, right? Because we have a challenge. I mean, it's not easy to get access, but you want to know who is in your network, right? So you put that in the thing, you just have this handy, right? Because that's what, if people were like to come to you and say, my teeth hurt, you'd want to have information about their dentist. Thank you. All right, okay. So let's just have this handy. Okay, next thing, support groups. This is what people struggle with. Alcoholics, gamblers, Narcotics Anonymous. The one that I find oops, go backwards for a second, is, the heck is this button? The Find a NAMI Family Support Group. Most of the organizations that we work with, their staff, when we ask them what do they want help with, it's usually about, I don't know how, I'm struggling because my mom is struggling. I'm struggling because my husband's struggling. I'm struggling with my kids. And so it's how do you find support for all of the people? Because it's when you have someone in your family who's struggling, it has a ripple effect that impacts you, right? You got to take care of yourself. So the NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness, they have a website, right? And they have a family support group website. You can find people around the country. If you don't know what to do, right? If someone says they're considering hurting themselves, right? You don't know what to do, all you do is call 988, right? So did you know 911, right? A couple years ago, across the country, they put out 988. So now, if you have a mental health crisis in America and you don't know what to do, you just dial 988, and they have people on the other line. And you can leave today and call, just dial 988 and say, hey, I just heard about you guys. I want to know what happens when someone calls you. They'd love it. So all across you dial 988. If you don't know what to do, right? Because remember, we're not there with you. If you don't know what to do, you just call 988. It's really simple. It is that simple. So the other stuff is, just things to, what I keep handy is what am I going to say? One of the things that someone taught me once, I think it was courageous conversation class. It was about what are the first words out of your mouth, right? So what are going to be the first words that you say? Because if you don't practice it, man, if I don't practice what I'm going to say, boy, do I go off script, which is why I'm always behind. All right, okay. Curious. So we've guided people to services, right? We're not here. So now someone has gotten help. Curious. When you have a colleague who is experiencing a severe illness and they're going to be out of work for a while, what are some of the things that you guys on your teams have done for them to help them? Yeah, you got meal. You brought meal to their family. Yeah, absolutely. What else? People are sick. Your colleagues are sick for a couple weeks. They got cancer. They had COVID. What do you do for them? Give them extra time off? Yeah. Have you ever comped them time off? Any of you guys ever participated on a team where someone ran out of sick days and so people volunteered, donated their PTO days? Yeah? Has anyone, raise your hand if you've ever been sick and someone from work checked in on you and said, hey man, how you doing? Just raise your hand, keep them up. Did it make you feel good? Now raise your hand if someone calling you to check in on you, you felt shitty because of it. I can't believe you called and checked in on me. Anybody? Anybody feel offended because they did? Right? The rules apply here too. If you do all this and you don't follow up with somebody, it doesn't count. And you follow up in the exact same way. Because you know what? You keep it private. I bet you before you did the meal train, you said, is it okay if other people know that you're sick and that we do the meal? You keep confidence, right? You're completely confidential. But I'm here to tell you, as a patient, there's nothing that gives me more joy and more happiness is when someone says, hey man, how you doing today? Are you doing okay? When they check in on me. And it doesn't happen very often, right? It is the most powerful thing you can do. You have to check in on people, and it's just as simple as asking, how are you doing? All right. So we talked about encouraging professional help, connecting with services. All right. Leadership behaviors that matter. All right. So, wow. I don't know. When I started realizing what this stuff felt like, I started understanding all these facilitative leadership, psychological safe leadership trainings that you go to, because how you experience it. So started thinking about what are those attributes. One thing we learned earlier is we can't keep our emotions at the door, right? One thing that we all do every day when we show up to work, no matter what anyone tells us, is we're bringing our emotions to work with us. It's like that thing's pink. Don't be pink. It's pink. You cannot do it. Right? It's fundamentally impossible. So people can't separate their feelings from them, and this is how a quarter of them feel, right? You guys are, so you can't separate. This is what a quarter of us are feeling on any given day, right? So how you talk with folk, those nonverbal cues, how you behave as a leader and as a colleague really matters, right? Are you showing up as respectful and vulnerable, compassionate, inclusive, humble, and appreciative? This isn't an all-inclusive list. Caring, empathetic, right? Can you see how, can anybody connect the dot between, say, anxiety and appreciation? So why, if someone is struggling with worry, would they want to experience their leader as appreciative? It's not a trick question. Validation. Why? Because you're worried that you're going to be fired, right? It's just, when you say thank you, you're doing a great job, you are helping someone you might not know, be struggling with anxiety, make a big difference in their life, right? If somebody is sad and has this unbelievable loneliness, someone connect the dot between that and inclusive leadership behaviors. Loneliness and inclusion. It's a softball right over the plate. Anybody? Why, if somebody is sad, might they want to be around leaders who are inclusive? Because they're lonely, because of belonging, right? So the thing is when you understand that this is how people feel, and there's nothing you can do about it, but oh, there is. We'll find out in a minute. Then start showing up like that. We're not going to have, get into all of this today. It's a whole workshop. But, I want to leave you with one tool that will help you figure this out when you go back to work. Because, saying it's one thing to say, hey, be respectful, right? But then how do I do it? What are those behaviors that I need to do? How do I show up? What are the tactics I can do so that people experience me as respectful? If you've never read this book, get this book. Read the Cliff Notes version of it. In all my years of management and leadership, this is one of the best classes someone ever gave me. It's appreciative inquiry. And here's the key thing I took from this book. If you want to understand how someone will feel, ask them, right? So this is like, you want to improve your people scores, You say to your, how might you, tell me about a time when you felt really engaged. What did it look like, right? So if you want to know how someone shows humility, and you want to understand that from your team, you might have a team meeting and say, tell me about a time when you guys experienced a leader who was humble. What did they do? How did it make you feel, right? And then, do you know what you do after that? It's really easy. What they just told you, right? You want to know how someone wants to feel included? Tell me about a time when you felt included by a leader. What did they do? And then do that. I mean, this is not rocket science. This is really, man, we go through like an hour and a half of this. It's kind of fun. All right, but we're going to run out of time. So we'll just try one of these, appreciation. So think about a time, just think privately in your head, and when you raise your hand, I'm going to ask someone to say it. So just be ready for it, right? So think about a time when you were appreciated? It could be work, it could be home, it could be anything. And you're like, wow, that really made me feel special. That was awesome. We all have those times. Now, you got one? Would somebody please raise their hand? Yeah. Handwritten thank you notes. Yeah, man, how'd it make you feel? Very good. So what's your name? Carl. Who works with Carl here? Anybody know Carl? Well, all of you who know Carl, start writing him handwritten thank you notes, right? He just told us what makes him feel special, right? Love that. So this stuff is not rocket science. It really is pretty simple. You know what? Okay, so hold on. How many tables you got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. You two tables in the corner, you guys be respectful, all right? You guys vulnerable, compassionate, inclusive, and humble, right? And I just want you to spend 3 minutes as a table asking, somebody asking, tell me about a time when someone at this table felt really respected by a leader at work. What happened? So we just want to get from the respect tables, one good story of what a leader did to show you respect. From the vulnerable tables, one good example of what a leader did to show one of you vulnerability. Does that make sense? All right? Anybody going like, dude, what's he talking about? All right. Go, please. Actually, end this fucking thing on time. All right, got another minute, then we'll pull you back. All right. Okay. All right, where do we start? Respectful table, folks. What's a good, how did you guys once feel, someone at your table feel respected? What do you got? One of you guys want to share? Yo, talk loudly.
So this is Michelle's. Okay, so Michelle shared with us a few years back. They had a new leader come in to the revenue cycle, which is kind of accounts receivable and all that good stuff. And she came from outside of the industry, wanted to learn what they were doing, asking them why are you doing that, and then in addition, why would you be paid what you're being paid right now, and advocated for a considerable increase for pay for the work that the team was doing.
Lovely. They asked why and helped get more money. That's lovely. Yeah, asking why. What about you guys?
We came up with when leaders take the time to collaborate with the people that work for them on specific projects and then trust them to make decisions about the project that they've set out for them. So it's really taking the time to listen, understand how they work and how they want to proceed, and then making sure that they're successful once they do that.
And making the decision. There's no more powerful thing to show respect than letting folks make the decision. You respect someone to make, why? Because have a senior position, should I make that position? What about the vulnerable? Can one of you guys share a story?
We just kind of said in general, I might have said it's like our huddle every morning where we just come and sometimes we just share how we're feeling and don't want anybody to do anything about it, but just need to get it off our chest. That's just a safe space, I think, that we create, at least on my team.
Vulnerability, starting with how are you feeling? Hoffman Construction, one of America's largest construction companies, founded in Portland, Oregon. Construction workers, one of the largest suicide rates in America of professional workers. They start their days now with checking in and everybody sharing, and the leader starting with how they're doing with their home. Do you guys have something?
Yeah, Robert here at the table is a manager on our team, and he has this conversation with his team the past 2 years. It just comes up where he talks about seasonal depression, and he's very open and vulnerable with his team. And the entire team of about, 30, 40 people, but they respond in kind, and it's very similar to what you're saying. Once he gives permission to everyone else to have that experience, I think that there's so much gratitude, and the conversations spill over for the rest of the week or the rest of the month. And
that's right on.
Yeah, it's really wonderful.
That's so cool. That is the single most powerful thing someone can do to share their vulnerability, is to share how they're feeling, right? Because when you do, then when you go have those engaging conversations, people open up to you because they feel safe talking with you, right? How about you guys with compassion?
So they actually demonstrated compassion as we were sharing our compassion stories. So my grandfather recently passed, and my bosses were very compassionate with me about that and sent flowers and that kind of thing. But then the table said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." So they kind of demonstrated for us right there.
They care for each other. It's lovely. What about you guys?
So I recently had a hand surgery, and all of my colleagues were really great in reaching out to me, but I was traveling with a coworker, and he went out of his way to be like, "Oh, let me take your bag. Would you like me to drive the car?" Just every little gesture he could to make sure that I wasn't overdoing it and was comfortable, and it was very thoughtful.
Treating you like a friend, right? Like you would a buddy. That's lovely. What do you guys? You guys are inclusive, humble. A humbly inclusive corner of the room.
So we had inclusive.
Talk to us.
And I mean, as we progress in our careers, we've all identified that maybe early on we were asked for input, but we've noticed that even later in our career, it was nice to have executives reach out and said, "Hey, I know what you deal with or who you deal with. I would appreciate that insight as we're making decisions, strategy, growth, stuff like that. Just asking specifically for your insight based on what you do."
That's great. Recognizing that we don't have all the answers, getting other people's folks. What about you guys?
We were also inclusive, I think. We were kind of talking about how difficult it's been, especially for my organization, I don't know about everybody else, since COVID. We have a lot more workers remote. So it's hard sometimes to be inclusive when you have so many people remote, but recently we've started reinstating in-person team meetings, and there's still some team members that live too far away to do that. So we usually include a meal, whether it's a lunch or breakfast. So we've been sending them like Grubhub gift cards so
That's
they could
awesome.
have meals delivered and feel included in
You're having
that.
lunch together.
Yeah.
And they really appreciate it. All right, let's get one table, then I apologize for the two we're skipping.
Yeah, our table was inclusive as well, and it's very similar to this table. You know, when your leadership comes and asks for input with regard to, you know, questions they're trying to answer for themselves and plans that they're making, that provides a lot of value as well. And then, of course, when they begin to trust you with larger projects and provide assignments that to kind of expand the scope of your current role, that feels inclusive as well.
That's awesome. So you see how, you know, in just like a 7-minute exercise, you know, you could do this at your team meetings and just choose one a week, one a month, right? This stuff is really easy to do, to figure out. It's hard to say be respectful. It's hard to say, well, I'm already respectful, but it's asking folk what that means to them. Told you we'd have a blueprint, you know, so what the heck do you do, right? So I hope that by now this is kind of a, you know, a flashing light of the obvious, right? It's invest a day in a mental health literacy class or a half day or a couple hours. And then you just use that as the foundation for learning more, right? You learned some stuff today, go learn some more. All of this is available in the public knowledge, right? And then just start using what you learned at work and sharing the knowledge. All you got to do, you're going to get all of these slides. You know, they'll send them to you. You just share what you're learning with the people around you, and you start having these 5-minute conversations. Because remember, this guy David, right? It all started with this 5-minute conversation. You invest a couple hours of your life, a couple more hours in a training, and then all day long you start to be having 5-day conversations that just that changes everybody's lives, but also improves all of your team's performance. And you know, I'll leave you with one last thought, which is more an answer to a question that I usually get asked than one last thought. But it's a question of, well, there's no services. What the hell do I do? I call, make an appointment. I can't get one for a month. It's hard to access. You know, it is. It's true. It's reality. And what I want you to think about is this. People are coming to work every day, right? And the behaviors that we're doing are making them sicker, right? So when you behave, when you practice behaviors that matter, right? And you help engage people and help them get services, what you're doing is you're reducing the demand for help. Can you imagine, and I guess I'll leave you with this one thought. What would it look like on all of your teams if starting today for the next year, what would it look like in 1 year if you showed up for work as your team leader every day or a colleague and said, one of my goals, you know, I got 6 goals this year. I now have a 7th goal. My 7th goal is I want to aspire to make sure that every employee on my teams, all of our colleagues, leave each day with a stronger state of their mental well-being than when they got here in the morning. If you just set, you get what you measure. You guys set that as a goal, right? Because we taught you exactly how to do it. If you set that as a goal, then you actually are decreasing the demand, right? And you can do it. All you have to do is just leave here and say, I got a new goal. My goal is when I show up for work on a Monday, I'm going to try to help make sure that everyone's leaving a little healthier than when they got there. You do that, it's just game over. So listen, it is time. You guys have a networking break. It's time for me to shuffle on back to Atlanta. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity today. So Amanda.